OWS Week has caught up on the movement's anniversaries all around the U.S. After a quick recap on New York, we are off to Occupy Chicago's first anniversary on September 23rd and to Portland for their anti-GM march. DC was up in arms against a white supremacist rally by the dreaded Aryan nations. Ain't no power like the power of the people.
1, we are the people. 2, we are united. 3, this occupation is not leaving.
On September 17, 2011, Occupy Wall Street set up camp in New York City. A year later, OWS held an anniversary weekend of education and celebration, proving the global Occupy movement is alive and well, despite mainstream corporate media's constant obituaries.
Legendary organizer!
Legendary organizer!
From Occupy Harlem!
From Occupy Harlem!
Nellie Bailey!
Nellie Bailey!
Thank you, brothers and sisters!
Thank you, brothers and sisters!
The media!
The media!
The corporate media of the U.S.
The corporate media of the U.S.
has prematurely
predicted
the death of Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street.
We may not be here in numbers as we were a year ago.
We may not be here in numbers as we were a year ago.
But we have changed.
But we have changed
the discourse.
The discourse.
And landscape. Of U.S. politics.
Of U.S. politics.
It is now a part of history.
A part of history.
There is no going back on that.
There is no going back on that.
We have broken.
We have broken.
And broke. New barriers.
New barriers.
In organizing.
In organizing.
And expressing.
And expressing.
The commonality.
The commonality.
Of the 99%.
Of the 99%.
Teach-ins, action trainings, and communal drumming circles filled the weekend, and on Monday, S17, there was a joyous carnival of liberation featuring puppets on parade, the Polar Bear Bike Brigade, and glitter bombs of bank lobbies. Protesters brought something beautiful to the financial district and maturely exercised nonviolent civil disobedience in the face of NYPD provocation at every turn.
We are here
In solidarity.
with
With our brothers and sisters.
our brothers and sisters
From labor.
from labor,
Community.
students,
And Occupy. 1 year ago.
1 year ago,
In this same park.
in this same park,
A brave set
a brave set
of young folks
of young folks
slept here
slept here
and started a movement.
and started a movement
A movement
of
people,
people,
of communities that lost homes, teachers in our classrooms, that lost jobs, incomes, and a lot of our lifestyles. And these same people that crashed our economy are down the street. They recovered. Our communities did not.
In just 1 year, Occupy segued from the initial encampments, which kick-started the movement and provided media presence long enough to launch its message globally, to a working phase in which local Occupy groups across the country do teach-ins, foreclosure protection, help workers unionize, create homeless shelters and soup kitchens, etc.
New York is better. Because of Occupy. We tax the millionaires. We organize the workers. We raise money. To fight poverty. To fight AIDS. We're here today. To say the 99% are back. Labor.
The media machine lost interest in post-camp Occupy's community-centered actions, but the fact is the movement has changed the dialogue in the U.S. Issues of social inequality and discussions of the 1% versus the 99% are everywhere. Not bad for a year's work.
Be Americans in a true sense, but they have a right to be citizens. The way Barack Obama said we should be citizens, the way the president says the president who is by Wall Street. That's why I'm in this movement.
Do you think it's made a difference on the...
I think it's made a huge difference in the nature of the conversation. The fact that people will talk about the 99% when no one talked about the 99%. For how many years? 30, 50? The fact that the speech, that the language has entered every politician's dialogue. The fact that the language has entered commercial advertising. The fact that people talk about it. The fact that people actually, there's a chance for people to be citizens and not consumers in this country. The fact that Barack Obama, running for re-election, knows it, and knows that that's what he has to appeal to, not to consumers, not to people distracted by weapons not of mass destruction, but of weapons of mass distraction. That we as citizens can take the power back in our hands, because it is a democracy, because it is the United States of America, because these people are the real patriots, the way the original patriots rose up against the British, rose up against the oligarchy, which was bleeding them dry. This is a patriotic movement. That's why I'm here.
What's your name?
Patriot.
Patriot. Can I ask you what your dream is?
My dream is that we actually have a democracy. I think it was a great idea, and I think someday somebody should do it.
Occupy Chicago and their allies celebrated the S17 anniversary of Occupy Wall Street by honoring global austerity resistance. The city of Chicago has imposed severe austerity measures on its citizens, and occupiers have worked with teachers, mental health consumers, and victims of bank foreclosures. OC rallied at Congress in Michigan, then began their anti-austerity march to Jackson and LaSalle. Actions included chalkupy, drumming, and chanting, until the sun set and the Overpass Light Brigade joined the protesters. Over in Portland, Oregon, occupiers joined with community activists to rally and march on S17 in solidarity with OWS New York and Colombian workers who are still on hunger strike after being fired from a General Motors plant for injuries incurred on the job. The 99ers always address an issue in their celebrations, and this event was no exception. Protesters marched to a Chevrolet dealership and delivered a memo to General Motors, then proceeded to St. Francis Park, now the home turf of Occupy Portland. Occupy DC and community allies took on a different sort of villain in the nation's capital on Saturday, the 22nd. With a motto of "Smash Racism," the 99ers united to counter-protest a march by the Aryan Nations, a white supremacist group. The group held a permit for their march from Lincoln Park to the Capitol, so, ironically enough, they were well protected by Metropolitan Police, a stark contrast to the constant harassment and curtailment of free speech and assembly rights of citizens participating in Occupy events. Chalkings greeted a white supremacist group when they reached the park, and their Nazi salutes and voices were drowned out by counter-protesters, who blocked the street several times in standoffs with mounted police officers. The message of the counter-protesters was clear. Racism is a disease that affects us all in varying degrees, and embracing diversity is key to the future of humanity. The anniversary of Occupy Wall Street in New York City will be followed closely by anniversary celebrations at Occupy locations across the country. Occupy Chicago held their one-year celebration of awakening on September 23rd.
I got involved in Occupy Chicago's first week. I was at work on a Saturday and had been reading articles about what was going on in New York, and there was a byline at one of the end of the stories that had said that there were occupations now in Boston, Los Angeles, and Chicago. And being somewhat politically active, I was kind of surprised I hadn't heard anything about it. So I immediately decided that the second I got out of work, I was going to jump on a train and head downtown, and I ended up spending the rest of the night down here, and then got up bright and early the next day and came down for a general assembly in the afternoon and never really left. Well, I mean, I guess it's a matter of like having all your ducks in a row and knowing what your main message is and what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to go about doing that, and making sure you have everything in place to execute it. I mean, one of the amazing things about Occupy is that so many of us had never had like any experience doing any of this stuff before, and then there were a lot who did, but it's really been like a huge learning experience for everybody. I think we would benefit from having like some long-term sustained campaigns. I was just in New York for the September 17th celebration, and it was interesting to see like the long-term campaigns they're planning on rolling out over the next year. I'd like to see us get more involved with that. I mean, we had a couple things that we stuck with for quite a while, but I'd like us to get it maybe a little bit more focused on a couple particular issues. That would probably be about it.
Their event was family-friendly and intended to continue active resistance to the status quo that has caused so many human beings to struggle for a better life and a better world.
I came down on day one on September 23rd last year after following Occupy Wall Street on Twitter, and then noticed somebody was starting an Occupy Chicago and calling for the first day of action to be on September 23rd in front of the Willis Tower. And so I made my way down there to participate in that. We started at the Willis Tower, and then we went to the Fed on a march at around 12 or 1. And then from there, we stayed in front of the Fed for the first 4 days or so. One of the most amazing experiences that happened on a day one, when I went down to Willis Tower to join, I didn't know any of these people that were going to do this. I didn't know who had called for it, and other than a Facebook and a Twitter account, I didn't know anything about it other than they held up the same ideals that Occupy Wall Street did. So when I showed up at the Willis Tower at 9:30 in the morning, I met a bunch of people, of which several have become really good friends of mine. And after standing in what started as kind of a cold drizzle for a while, we decided to march to the Fed. There's maybe like 15, 18 of us. During the march from Willis Tower to the Fed, we gathered another maybe 20, 25 people. So we ended up at the Fed with about 30 to 35 people that all just came down for the same reason. And it was inspiring and exhilarating to see so many people that felt there was a problem, and enough of a problem that they were going to step out of their comfort zone and do something about it. And during the course of the day, we went on a couple more marches, and every time we gathered more people. So by the time the march would return to the Fed, there was, more and more people.
Activities at OC's event began with a safe and creative protest presentation by NLG's Jerry Boyle and a children's story hour, arts and crafts, Choccupy, and drum circle. Poetry readings and musical performances were held, as well as street theater and a speak out.
Accomplishments, definitely just starting the dialogue about income inequality, about bankers, about corrupt politicians, about money in politics. If you sort of talked about anything like bad about the government like a year or two ago, people would call you like a conspiracy theorist, or they would just like discredit you. But now like people are starting to like listen more, and so I feel like the dialogue, like before you can have a revolution or anything like that, people like have to talk, and they have to be made aware that there actually is a problem. And now I think that people are starting to be like, there is a problem and there is things that we can do about it. We don't just have to accept it. And I think that that's one of our accomplishments from this past year.
The anniversary march was a great success, and OC also showed solidarity with their incarcerated comrades, the NATO 5.
Yeah, I think it changed the national dialogue with you hear people using the terms 99% and 1% more often, and you have that sort of mindset that more people are starting to realize that it's not as simple as just red team versus blue team in our political process, that both the red team and the blue team have been taking money from the same people, and that this is an issue that affects our entire democracy, not just one side or the other. So I think that's a real high point with the national conversation. Even the corporate media has had to sort of acknowledge this sort of change in dialogue. Some other high points I think have been really great here on the ground. I've heard some people compare the atmosphere to that of a music festival almost, without the drugs and with more of a political mindset for sure, because it's really people getting together with a positive energy and not just protesting, not just speaking their minds, but also celebrating. And I think that social aspect is really important and something that's missing in society today a lot.
So another eventful week for the Occupy movement has come and gone, and there will be more. The 99ers involved in OWS are savvy, creative, and determined. dedicated to their local communities and to making another world possible. They come from all walks of life and represent all races, ages, and education levels.
Yeah, I will try, but it's not my mother tongue to speak in English.
What's up?
It's not my mother tongue, so
yeah, it's fine. Try it. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. So I think the actual crisis is about capitalism, because the world actually before this crisis already has been not the way the people wanted it to be, and it's there are very few people in the world who get a lot of profit from other people's working and suffering. And I think there are multiple crises. It's not only on economics, it's also about sexual and racial suppression and suppression of disabled and lots of other multiple crises, and the reproduction crisis. And I think the way that we have to turn to or go to is that we have to organize ourselves, and we have to take over the power to get the people encouraged to manage their lives themselves in a way that it's not along profits, but along the real needs of the people who are already walking here in the streets. And we have to become more, but I think that's the right way to do it.
Hello, I'm from Germany. I'm visiting, and for me it's pretty scary situation, because we are used to demonstrate in the streets, and here people demonstrate on the sidewalks. I don't know, that seems strange to me. I think I used to know it the other way around, you know, the cops on the sidewalk and people in the street. I think it's a violation of the right of free assembly, of demonstrating, of expressing your opinion. Yes, it is, yeah.
They have spent a year working too hard and too many venues to adequately detail here. Some have been repeatedly arrested. Many now have felony arrest records and permanent wrist and hand injuries for exercising their First Amendment rights. They have lost their jobs, their homes, and most chances of societal success in the process. But they persevere in the face of all odds. They persevere because their mission is imperative, compelling, and righteous. And they ask of the American 99% still glued to their televisions, holding on to the crumbs dropped by the 1%, which side are you on? OWS Week has repeatedly referenced the connection between America's revolutionary patriots, civil rights activists, and the 99ers on the streets today. Occupiers have changed the dialogue in the U.S. and have exposed layers of incestuous rot, hypocrisy, and deceit in every level of government, corporations, and mainstream media. OWS has taught many middle-class white people what poor people and people of color already knew. The law is often hostile and arbitrary. Speak too loudly, stand in the wrong place, and you're on the wrong side of it. Isn't it time for the rest of America to wake up? Your alarm has been going off for a year now. A year of mass arrests, beatings, intimidation, and libel has failed to silence the voices that make up the 99ers worldwide. If anything, in the year since Occupy announced its existence in New York, the rich have continued their grab for the resources, and the underprivileged have become even poorer, caught up in a circle of debt, unemployment, and homelessness. The 99ers' drive to make another world a reality has been written off by the corporate media's mouthpieces as a failed experiment to discourage the people, the main force behind the movement, from adding further momentum to the attempt to break free of the cycle of thankless servitude to the 1%. The September 17, 2012 anniversary has come and gone, and the NYPD arrests of 180 people in one afternoon in downtown Manhattan during the anniversary protests speaks volumes for the lingering nervousness of the ruling elite in the face of massive popular dissent. So what has happened to Occupy? Well, the raw energy of the early days of the uprising has had to be directed to preserve the growing awakening among the U.S. public. Countless Occupy phrases used to describe the world that we live in have become firmly rooted in popular culture. Another generation in America has woken up to political realities deliberately obscured by the rulers' mouthpieces. CNN, Fox, CBS, and others' circle of deceit and propaganda have lost their hold on the U.S. public psyche. Occupy has transformed into a grassroots movement supported by the big unions in America for a start. The 99ers do not hide their abhorrence for a political process that has come to only serve the corporations and fat cats. The question was how to impact the political processes of America without having to become the enemy in the process, and this conundrum was navigated via a growing prowess among the union members across America. Occupy is recognized across the board by the rank and file as a movement to bring about true change, and the rulers' harassment and intimidation, libel, and allegations against American patriots have proven counterproductive. The state-sponsored oppression has worked like a catalyst for the movement's growth and credibility. It looks like the underdog shall have its day after all. The pursuit of outdated and deeply unpopular foreign policies by Washington has focused minds on how far the U.S. has been deviated from its intended course. A country meant to unite all races and creeds has become an instrument of war and oppression across the globe. Its industries and manufacturing sector, stuff of legends only a few decades ago, have been reduced to a war machine-making operation to prop up despots in Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere at the expense of their populations. Untold misery is being exacted on defenseless civilians in the U.S. drone assassinations abroad, with thousands of innocents, man, woman, and child in early graves. The disastrous war on Iraq resulted in the deaths of an estimated 1 million civilians under pretexts that ring more hollow with each passing day. In Afghanistan, the cockamamie war on terror has further damaged a barely functioning infrastructure. The famed precious stones of Afghanistan have been looted by the ton throughout the U.S. occupation of the country, with the wholesale theft of the country's future set to continue. In the U.S., a land thought to be paradise by its original inhabitants, open mining and fracking have served to devastate the landscape and poison water resources. A massive rise in children born with defects in America is telltale signs of heavy metals in the drinking water caused by such practices. Areas of outstanding natural beauty, unique to North America, have been decimated in the process. The Occupy's progressive vision seeks to remedy a whole raft of ills through alternative lines of thought and measures to ensure everybody and every living species' survival. But for the vision to take hold among the public, a series of evolutionary steps will have to be assumed. While street protests stretch and exhaust the 1%'s henchmen, other dimensions of social aptitude and fraternity among all inhabitants of our planet are being explored as we speak. The central message of the 99ers remains: another world is possible. Just imagine.